Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Today I'm looking at a brand new steam loco from Rapido. Rapido have produced a handful of locomotives already for the British market, but most of those have been exclusive to various companies which have sold them exclusively. Today's loco is not like that though. Today's loco is a general release locomotive that is going out to all sorts of different retailers, and I believe it's only the second locomotive for which that is true. The first, I would say, was the APT. So today's loco then is possibly the first general release steam loco we've ever seen from Rapido. So there's a lot riding on this one. What is it? Well, it is this. It is the brand new tooled Hunslet 16-inch tank engine. And these were industrial tank engines, so not part of the Big Four or British Railways generally speaking, so a little bit out there, a little bit obscure. And I don't believe this model has ever been produced before in 00 scale, so it's quite interesting to see something entirely new in 00. Now, Rapido usually sort of errs on the expensive side in terms of pricing, and I think the RRP for this is rather steep. It's £129.95, so it's definitely up there, isn't it, with the most expensive 060s. But because Rapido do supply retailers who supply models themselves at a bit of a discount, I was able to pick this one up from D-Rail's Models for £109.50. Now, that's still a lot of money, but I think in this day and age, that makes this quite a reasonable deal, assuming it is high in quality and detail. I've not had this out of the box yet, so that's what we're going to find out. If you're interested in picking one of these up, I will include some affiliate links down in the description, but for now, let's get this out and let's see what this is like. Okay, so this is only the second British Rapido loco I have ever looked at, and while I was incredibly impressed by the first one, that was the J70, it's very hard to get a general idea of what a manufacturer is like just from a single loco. So I'm hoping this one will give us much more information as to what Rapido is actually like as a manufacturer of locomotives, and that will give us a better idea of what we can expect from them going forward, because they have quite a few locos announced now and I can't wait to find out what they're like. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the one I've got is the Hunslet 16-inch 060 saddle tank. It's product number 903003. Mine's in the NCB lined red. It's called Beatrice, which I think is a great name for a loco. And this one is DC and silent, hence the low price of £109.50 from the retailer. Not much to learn on the box, so I think it's finally time to delve inside and see what we get for the money. So here we go. Very, very small box, which will keep shipping costs down, I suppose, but you can still see that there's some quality packaging in there, which is, yeah, I think that's good to see. Right, so we've got a very, very miniature owner's manual here with loco in green on the front. Let's see what we've got then. So a little bit of an introduction. We've got a prototype history right there, a bit on unboxing. Yeah, you're supposed to grip it at the centre of the frame, sides above the wheels. I guess that means the running plate. Fitting the polybag parts, a bit about the steps there. Running in, yep, that's fairly standard. You need to run in the loco, that's fine. A little bit about couplings, DC/silent operation. Apparently it's got a 21st century motor and electronic components in it. That's very good to hear. Talks about some older controllers that you can't use with this loco. I suspect then that this loco probably has a coreless motor inside it, but we'll see. DCC operation, apparently it's got a next 18-pin decoder socket, so that's fair enough. A bit on how to fit a DCC decoder. At last we've got some diagrams, so this is how to remove the body. It looks like the saddle tank comes off. You've got to prise that off. Ooh, ouch. We'll see how easy that is to do then. A little bit of servicing. We can see we've got bearings on the loco there. Very nice. But yeah, it shows you where to lubricate and everything. DCC functions. A list of the functions. I suppose this is more applicable to sound-fitted versions. Missing or damaged parts, warranty. A little bit more information. And on the back, we've even got an exploded diagram. I think you would need a magnifying glass to properly read this. but at least it's here if you really need it, and at least it sort of fits perfectly in the box. So yeah, very, very small, but it seems to contain everything, which is great. Right, let's have a look at this loco then. Do we just, yeah, peel this back as normal? Wow. Now, I've owned a Hunslet loco or two in the past. It's the Hunslet Austerity. This seems a lot smaller than one of those. I was kind of imagining this to be the same sort of size. I would say that's smaller at a glance. Right, we'll get to that in just a second. I can see that there's an accessories bag here. And yeah, what's in it is very, very minimal. You've just got a couple of steps as the instructions said. So everything else then is already fitted to the loco. So let's put that back safely and let's pull the loco out. Or perhaps I should call her by name, Beatrice. All right, so quite a few different liveries on offer from Rapido. I've gone for this one, but if you want to check out the others, they all look equally good, really. I just happen to fancy this one. All right, so you've got good quality packaging, a little bit of foam in the top and bottom, just to further cushion the loco. That's a good sign. All right, let's open it up. Let's get our first look at the finish of the loco, which is all wrapped up. Very well wrapped up. Oh, there we go. Interesting. I was expecting the top to be maroon like the sides, but no, it's black. Very, very interesting. Yeah, the finish is decent, isn't it? Particularly on the roof of the cab. You've got a definite sheen on there. Don't know if that's coming across on camera. Yeah, sort of. So that looks good. I think the quality is visible straight away. Yeah, it just looks like a quality loco, doesn't it? So I think the next step is going to be to gingerly lift it up. Yeah, I'll tell you what, it feels like a quality loco as well. So here it is, the brand new Rapido Hunslet 16-inch cylinder loco, and this is Beatrice. And yeah, she looks lovely, doesn't she? The livery is noticeably very good indeed. I like that a lot. All of the lining looks great at a glance. In terms of the construction, it feels as though the bodywork is just plastic. So the saddle tanks, the running plate, all of that is plastic. It doesn't look as though any of that is warped in any way. I will of course check that. So as long as it's all good and straight, that's not a huge issue because the weight seems fine. I'm actually surprised that this is as heavy as it is, given that the body largely seems to be plastic. The chassis must be made of tungsten or something because it's got to be dense, hasn't it? So yeah, we'll have a look inside later on, figure out where all of that weight is coming from. But first of all, here's a little bit of info on these locos in real life, and then we'll take a much closer look at the model and see what sort of features it has to offer. The Hunslet Engine Company was founded in 1864 in Hunslet, England by John Towlerton Leather. Having built their first engine in 1865, the company would go on to build countless locomotives for the next 100 years or more. This particular 16-inch 060 design dates back to 1923 and was a relatively simple design that was produced throughout the Second World War and into the 1950s. The 16-inch part obviously refers to the cylinders, which were 16 inches in diameter, and they also produced locomotives that had 12-inch, 14-inch or 15-inch diameter cylinders. Because they were operated by industrial companies, some of them very small, and not by massive railway companies, these engines had to be extra versatile. They had to be easy to maintain, they had to be durable, and capable of working in extremely poor conditions where the track work and maintenance could leave much to be desired. 44 of this particular design were built in total, and many of those still remain today under preservation and in museums. So there she is, up close and personal for you, Rapido's latest release, the 16-inch Hunslet. And I think you can probably tell what a gorgeous, gorgeous loco this is. The detail, the livery, everything just comes together this time to make a fantastic looking model. You might say that detail-wise this looks like a relatively simplistic model, but of course that's kind of the idea. In real life, these locomotives were designed to be as simplistic as possible, and that's because they were intended to be shipped out to all sorts of different industries. Railway companies are obviously locomotive experts, but all these different industries where these locos could have ended up were not necessarily. So they had to be simple locomotives, and therefore any simplicity in the outward detail on this model is perfectly prototypical. except for the lack of couplings on the coupling hooks. The instructions did mention that the model did not come with them, but it didn't really explain why. So presumably Rapido just decided not to include those. I think that is a pity. Having those as an optional extra would have been nice. The only other omission for me would be the separately fitted etched nameplates and builder's plates as well on the coal bunker. The ones that are here look fine, but they are just printed and they do lack that relief and that finish that you get from the etched piece. I think as a reasonably pricey loco, it wouldn't have been asking too much to have had those optional extras included. Besides that though, the loco, in my opinion, has everything it needs. So let's start taking a look at some of the decoration, which is relatively complex on this example. So you have got the lining around the saddle tanks, and there's quite a few different colours going on because obviously you've got that lovely black on the top of the tank, which looks quite interesting. The finish across all of this is excellent, by the way. I'm sure you can see what a sort of satin gleam the whole loco has, so that's fantastic. The side of the cab has got quite a lot of lining on it as well. As you can see, all of that is done to a high standard, as is the print work here. You've got the NCB lettering, which looks good. And the builder's plate, yeah, even though it's just a print, it's a good quality print, I would say. And you've got the running number there as well. The buffer beams have the industrial wasp striping on them, which looks great. Yeah, I think the quality of the paint there, again, is very high. Same on the other end. Yeah, wasp striping looks very, very good. The wheels are nicely done as well. The wheels themselves have a lovely finish on them. I wonder if they are cast wheels. I think they could be. They've got a great finish. Nicely painted, of course. The axles are painted over as well. And the coupling rods look very, very fine. I would say they are cast pieces as well, possibly. And obviously also painted. One really impressive thing about this loco is that the underside of the boiler is fully modelled as well, and you've got this real gap underneath the loco, as you can see. So that's impressive for a number of reasons. First of all, obviously it's visually accurate, that's how the real thing looked, but it also means that the gear train is presumably housed within the firebox area, which is quite a slim space to fit a quality mechanism, isn't it? But that's good. Between the frames, you can see we also have some valve gear modelled. Not a huge amount of detail here, but it's more than enough just to catch the eye as it runs past, presumably. And that's really cool to see. And the underside of the boiler is also lined too. Let's start looking at some of the details then. So we do have separately fitted metal sprung buffers, as you can see. Yeah, not much springing to those, but they are sprung, so it gets the sprung buffer points. The smokebox door is nicely moulded, and it does have the separately fitted smokebox dart. Above there is a lamp bracket. This loco is light on lamp brackets, but it does have one there, interestingly. Up on top, you've got the water filler cap for the tank, which is incredibly detailed part. I'm going to be very careful not to accidentally catch that. And then you've got the whistle and safety valve assembly on top. These are clearly just plastic pieces, not metal, I don't think, but still nicely moulded. The quality in the moulding definitely sort of makes up for the fact that they are not metal. The finish isn't bad either. You've got various handrails fitted to the side of the tank and also the underside. Yep, those seem to be made of metal and good quality. The cab has got glazed windows, and the window frames are very, very intricately painted around those. Yeah, the glazing is actually really nice on this loco. Around the back of the cab, we have another elusive lamp bracket, so that's nice to see. A coal load, which is very realistically formed. I love the way it dips down in the centre, as if the fireman has been taking the coal from the central hatch, which is modelled on the inside, by the way. Yeah, it's a really nice little bit of attention to detail there. And then, of course, the cab interior is absolutely wonderful. You can see that on the inside, the glazing is only visible where it's supposed to be. You haven't got a strip of visible plastic running between the windows. You've got pipe work, you've got controls, you've got gauges separately painted inside there. I'm not sure if we're going to have lighting in the cab, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if when I run this loco we get firebox LEDs coming on. Again, that's something that's got to fit into this ridiculously small area, but this is Rapido, I definitely wouldn't be surprised. And then on the other side of the loco, there's a little bit more detail in the form of this reverser rod, which seems to be a separately fitted piece. And then there's this second separately fitted rod as well, which is for controlling something else, maybe cylinder drain cocks, something along those lines anyway. Yeah, it's a really, really beautiful loco. In terms of quality, it's not the heaviest in the world really on the scales. It comes in at 169 grams, which is 1 gram lighter than Rapido's J70. That's obviously a much smaller loco, and it's around 10 grams lighter than the Hornby B2 Peckett, which is also a much smaller loco. So I think the plastic construction has meant that this model is not as heavy as it ought to be, but there's certainly no warping or anything on the running plate. As you can see, that's nice and straight. So from a quality point of view, it really does only affect the weight. The build quality is generally high, but there are areas where glue is visible. Underneath the cab roof, for instance, there's a little bit of a spillage there, and over on the other side of the smoke box is a touch of glue. So the amount of visible glue is certainly not egregious, but it's more noticeable on this loco than it has been on the last few models I've reviewed from other manufacturers. But yeah, overall the quality is fine. The loco's not too light, I don't think, and most of the detailing is fitted nice and straight. So overall, a very, very impressive loco. It does come in at a somewhat reasonable price, I think, so value for money seems to be okay. But of course I can't speak on that definitively until I've seen the performance and also the mechanism. So let's get this beautiful loco down onto the track. Let's give her her first run and let's see how she fares in that area. So there is Beatrice down onto the track and looking great in my opinion. I have already filmed the first performance test and I'll show you what happened in just a second. After filming that, I went on and took a look at the mechanism, and that's what I want to talk about first of all. Overall, the mechanism ticks all of the boxes. I would say it's a decent quality mechanism. It isn't my favourite mechanism in the world. It does have a few design elements that I'm not particularly fond of, and I'll try and explain why as we go. But ultimately, I think it's fine. There's nothing too egregious about this. The base keeper plate is held on by screws, and apparently, according to the instructions, those are all you have to undo to get it to come off. Except mine was stuck, it just was not shifting. So I double and triple checked the instructions to just absolutely confirm that was all I needed to do. And then I just had to resort to a bit of brute force, and eventually it came off in a very sudden, rapid movement. But ultimately, it revealed quite a surprise. So, unbelievably, this is a split chassis locomotive, or at least the lower part of the chassis is split chassis. So it's made up of two insulating halves, and then the pickup is achieved via the bearings. Obviously, the idea being that you don't then have to have wiper pickups. But I'm not too keen on this design really, because while that does work as a way of picking up, it's not quite so easy to maintain. If this had wiper pickups, you would just remove the base keeper plate, wipe those pickups clean, and then you're good to go. It's a little bit more tricky to clean these pickups because you can't really do it properly without disassembling the whole wheel set, getting off the bearings, giving it a full clean, all that stuff. They also said in the instructions, don't get any oil onto these bearings, whereas most manufacturers recommend oiling the bearings. And in fact, yes, you should be oiling bearings because that reduces friction and it extends the life of the axle and the bearing itself. But because these bearings conduct electricity, they are advising you not to. So really, I guess if you don't want to void the warranty or something, you'd have to go out and buy some lubricant that is safe for electrical connections. Not ideal. Another disadvantage of this sort of split chassis system is the need for a plastic insulator between the two wheels. And this doesn't seem to have that. Instead, if I remove some of this lubricant, you can see we've got this, I guess, a metal sleeve. So I'm not sure quite how this design works. It's quite intriguing. I wonder if this metal sleeve is there to reinforce some sort of plastic insulator that's on the inside. I think that would be my best guess, but that does look like a better quality solution than just a bit of plastic between the two halves of the axle. So yeah, that looks all right actually. Interestingly, you can see the chassis has been designed for all-wheel drive, and then at some point they decided they weren't going to do that because you've just got one single axle that's driven. I'm actually glad about that. Yeah, I prefer that. There's no real need to have all axles driven. But it does mean that some of the chassis weight has now been lost because there are still the holes in the chassis for the gears. And obviously it would have been a bit of a waste of design time too, I guess. But ultimately that's more just an interesting observation than a criticism, obviously. Right, so the body removal I'm not keen on either. It actually turned out not to be too difficult, but still I don't really like spudging parts of the body off with various tools. They do say that you're supposed to use some sort of plastic implement to do this, but they didn't provide you with one. So like the oil, if you really don't have something like this, you'd have to get one somehow, and that's annoying when you just want to get your new loco chipped. And inside you've got the DCC decoder socket, which is nice and accessible after you've got the top of the tank off. And you can also see that the inner tank is actually die cast, so that explains why the weight of the loco is actually pretty good. Yeah, there's some fair amount of weight inside there. And then underneath the DCC circuit board, you can see you've got the cordless motor there and a flywheel fitted to it, which is a great quality feature. And then the gauge comes in at 14.4 to 14.5 millimeters back to back, so that's pretty much at the standard. Some axles very slightly above the standard, but not in a criminal way or anything. So yeah, the mechanism is fine, isn't it? It checks all of the boxes. I don't think serviceability is as great on this one, and I'm not a big fan of that pickup design, frankly. I don't really see why that was necessary. It's a very, very complicated way of doing things. And of course, plenty of locos with traditional pickups are absolutely perfect. In fact, my best runners are the simplest in design. Anyway, let me show you how this one performs then. Let's roll the performance test. Right, it is the moment of truth. It is time to ask the question, does the loco work? So, forwards direction, let's give it some juice and find out. First ever run. Oh yes, it works. Gosh. That seemed insanely smooth. Yeah, look at that. All right, let's go up to 50% speed and we'll do a run past. Oh yeah, cool, that's it. That seems lovely, doesn't it? Nice and smooth. Not very noisy at all. Yeah, it's fairly good and quiet. There seems to be some sort of flywheel action in there as well. Has this got a big flywheel or something? Let me cut it off in front of you. Cut power. Oh yeah. So it's a very, very smooth free-rolling mechanism. Seems as though there's a flywheel on there. Obviously, the mass of a coreless armature is very, very low. So a flywheel is a great call on a coreless motor. Assuming this is a coreless motor, I think it is, looking at the diagram. Right, so it's not been running yet, and Rapido did clearly say in the instructions that this loco would need a good run-in. So it may not be necessarily at its best at the moment, but I do want to know what the crawl's like straight out of the box. So I'm going to ease it up and take a look. I'm going backwards, I think, but we'll try it in both directions. Still easing. Still easing. I'm wondering if it's possibly cut out. Yeah, I think it had cut out. Right, try forwards. Bit more, I think. I suspect it might be stalling. Yeah, it's struggling, isn't it? But like I say, it hasn't been running yet. Yeah, it kind of rotates a bit and then stops. So, cutting out now. Alright, so I think really to get a proper test out of this, I'm going to have to wait until it's running. But that's fine. So, I guess that's what I'll do next then. Let's set this to forwards direction, let's go 50% power, and let's see how it handles the track. Alright, here we go. That's 50%, so it's definitely a sensible speed. It doesn't race along too quickly. Second radius curves, yeah, no problem. And do you know what I just spotted as well? I didn't notice this before. It's got lights in the firebox LEDs. So I'll try and get a close-up on that for you. Yeah, I'm amazed that they've managed to cram that in, despite the tight space for the gear train. Very, very impressive. So it's got some good features to it. The performance seems strong. I think as the loco runs in and its axles sort of wear those pickups in a little bit, I think it will definitely improve, hopefully, with a bit more reliability at the low end. And then I'll be able to test the crawl, see what that's like. But at the high speeds, it does seem to be quite consistent and reliable. Not really seen it slow down in this running it's done so far. So yeah, I think it's looking good. It just needs that full running in period then. And I'll come back and we'll do some more testing. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. Back in a second. Okay, there we go. That is running in complete then. And generally speaking, that went without issue. I have noticed it sounds a little bit odd sometimes. Going round certain curves, it's developed a bit of a squeak, which is ironic because it sounds like the bearings already need some oil, but I'm not going to do that, obviously, because this is a review. I'm supposed to review it as it comes. It also sounds like maybe it's losing power very, very slightly sometimes, and then that flywheel carries it on until power's restored. I could be wrong about that. It seems a little bit intermittent at times, and that does tally with the way it was running when I tried to make this crawl. But I guess that's what we need to find out now. Now that it's had a good run in, is it going to crawl in a more sustainable way? So let's try again. Let's do it exactly as before. Start with a reverse. I think already it seems better. Is it moving there? Yeah, there we go. But it has stopped again. Let's try and give it some more. Ooh, saved itself, but yeah, that was a bit of a stall there. Let's try a bit higher speed, like that. Oh, stalled again. So yeah, I am going to say that odd and fussy pickup design has not done this loco any favours really. Yeah, it's actually not as reliable as it would have been with a much simpler traditional pickup design. Now, that's what I would say to any manufacturer really. I mean, there is a reason why the likes of Hornby and Bachmann just use traditional pickups, very simple mechanisms, in the way that they have for years and years really, and that's because they just work. They work the best, they're easy to service. There's no need to try and reinvent the wheel with different sorts of pickups. And, you know, doing it through the axles can be fine. I've got plenty of locos that work fantastically with that design, but I just don't know why it's necessary. And in fact, this one seems a bit intermittent. Yeah, now your mileage may vary. That could of course just be a quirk with my model. It could be because I'm running it on analog. Maybe it will be better on DCC, possibly. But yeah, it's not sustaining a crawl as well as some 060s that I've got. That's not bad now, I suppose. It's not stopped now. It's going very slowly now. Let's see if it can sustain it. And then I'm going to try it on the points, see how it gets on. Yeah, it's actually handling that quite well, isn't it? Let's keep going. See if we can get over some points with it. Let's give it a bit more. I don't want to be... Oh, there we go. It's stalled as soon as I give it some more. Yeah, I don't want to be too mean across the points. Let's try it at that kind of speed. Alright, so it did hesitate, but I don't think it lost power. It just sort of, don't know, struggled to move itself. So yeah, it's not bad by any means. I think I have seen better. It did stop going backwards. But yeah, I wish it had less fussy pickups. I think that's mostly what my grievances are with this. Right, the pulling power is okay as well. It's got 0.26 newtons of tractive effort, which equates to approximately 22 coaches on straight and level track. That's more or less what I'd expect from a loco of this weight. So to test its pulling power, I've set up quite a good number of wagons. There's probably a good 20 odd there. So I think that should be a good test of this loco's abilities. So let's go and see how the couplings perform. Here we go. So I have to say it's very, very easy to control. Yeah, I reckon I'll be able to do a good coupling with that. Yeah, and as you saw, the coupling seems to be at the right height, which is good. I think we've stalled there. No, off we go again. Yeah, just moving them at slow speed as well. That's great. Right, let's speed it up then. Let's go for about 40, I think. I think that looks really realistic. So we'll see how it gets on with that. I've got some other saddle tanks running on the other lines. Let's go a bit quicker with this one. This is the J94 from DJM. I suppose it's a relatively modern loco. Nowhere near at the same standard as Rapido's saddle tank though. So yeah, definitely an improvement over the likes of that. And then on the inside line, I've got the Hornby take of the same class. This is also a J94 or Austerity. See which other industrial locos you can spot on the sidings and such. And I will pin the first comment that correctly identifies the odd one out. So I do think it's true that we have seen better all-round performers than this loco, but it's certainly true that at the higher speeds, this loco performs as well as you could possibly ask it to. It's hauling quite a load here, it's still smooth, it's still consistent in its speed, it's certainly not slowing down. And I didn't show you a torque test this time, but I did do it. And the loco can turn its wheels with an obstruction. There's definitely no weakness there. And that's really the strength of coreless motors, really. Very, very small, they have a tiny footprint, and yet they produce quite a lot of torque for their size. And that's done great for this loco. It's a decent hauler, as you can see. Ultimately then, for less than £110 in my case, it's hard to argue with this loco, isn't it? It looks fantastic, the level of detail is good, it's got one or two flashy features, not a huge amount, but it's got more than enough to be an impressive model. I love the LEDs in the firebox, I love the sprung buffers, the livery, the finish, all of that looks fantastic. And of course there are so many other liveries to choose from as well, all of them quite different actually. Great variety of different liveries, but they all look great. That's the one thing they do have in common, I suppose. So all in all, yeah, it's not 100% perfect, but at the end of the day it does work properly. I would say overall properly is the way it works. It looks good, the quality is fine. Yeah, there's very, very little to complain about here, and I can recommend it easily. Let's have some ratings then on the all-new Rapido Hunslet 16-inch saddle tank locomotive. The level of detail for me was very, very nearly perfect. The decoration and the finish look great. You've got the sprung buffers, all of the fine detail parts. The cab in particular was so impressive, particularly when I discovered that it also had the firebox lights. The only thing missing for me would be the etched nameplates and builder's plates. That's a bit of an omission in my opinion, and also the lack of coupling chains. So because of those, I can't give it 5 stars, but it is very, very close. The performance for me is a 4-star. This is a very, very smooth running loco actually. It's quite noticeably smooth as it runs along. It's reasonably reliable. I would say it is perfectly reliable at the higher speeds, but at the lower speeds, at least on analog, my example is quite hesitant. It struggles a little bit. You really have to crank it up a bit before it becomes perfectly reliable. But yeah, at the high speeds it is fine. It doesn't slow down on curves or anything like that. Generally it is a good performer. Not the greatest, but pretty darn good. The pulling power, again, is about middle of the road, 0.26 newtons. That's the same as a Bachmann 64XX pannier or a Bachmann Small Prairie. So I would say the pulling power is perfectly adequate. 22 coaches, nothing wrong with that at all. The mechanism, generally speaking, is great on paper. It's got the proper bearings on the axles, you've got good access to those axles, you've got the quality coreless motor, which seems to run fine, it's got a flywheel, all that good stuff. I do think the practicality of the mechanism leaves a bit to be desired. The serviceability of those axles is not great because of the way the pickups are, and getting access to the DCC decoder socket and the motor and such is a bit of a pain because of those body clips prizing bits of the tank off to try and get to them. Yeah, it's not the greatest experience in the world, but it doesn't change the fact that the mechanism is overall decent, so I've given it 4-star. There isn't a major issue with the quality either, but I've given it 3-star because there are a number of minor things that drag it down for me. First of all, the plastic body construction. I think if there was a bit more die cast on here, particularly on the running plate, the model would feel better quality and it would have a little bit more weight to it as well. The weight's not bad by any means at 169 grams, it's fairly nice, but a little bit more wouldn't have gone amiss either. Also, you've got a couple of bits of glue visible too. Not a huge amount, but certainly enough to notice. Otherwise though, yeah, it's fine. The way it's been put together is really, really good. Value for money then, £129.95. I think that's a little bit on the steep side perhaps for what you get, but this is Rapido and overall it is a good loco. I think the retailer price of £109.50 or thereabouts is a lot better. It's a lot better. So I've split the difference and I've given it 4-star. It is an expensive loco, but ultimately I think it's worth it. So overall that is 7.67 out of 10. Not a bad score at all actually, a grade C. Let's put it into the logbook, and it is 2nd place right in the middle there, above the ES1 by Haulage and below the Accurascale Class 92. Yeah, if you were thinking of getting one of these, sure, I can recommend it. It's not blown me away in the same way that the Rapido J70 did, let's say, but it's still a very, very decent model, and it does what it says on the tin. Well folks, thank you so much for watching. That is the end of this review. I'm really quite pleased with this thing. I don't think it's blown me away as much as the J70 did. Maybe there was less opportunity to add special details with this, but that's not to say that it's not an impressive model. I think it looks fantastic, as I've said, and at everything above a crawl, it works fine as well. So let me know what you think about this. Have you got one of these? What do you think? Have you noticed any of the same quirks in the performance? How do you feel about the mechanism? Does it cut it for you? Do you give a damn or not? do let me know. But for now, that will about do it for this review. So thank you so much for watching. Affiliate links in the description if you're interested in getting one. And I'll see you very, very soon for another review. Cheers, everybody. Take care.